I am airing today from the statue of the unknown soldier here in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Approximately 300 American troops are deployed in Cameroon. Make no mistake, they are not combat forces. The approximately 300 American troops will be based in Garoua, the north region of the country. Again, make no mistake, it is not an American military base in this country. The reality is Boko Haram, the terrorist organization, has taken an extraordinary, proportionate and disproportionate measures to attack Cameroonians across the chessboards. And the government, through the President of the Republic, has sought international assistance, as he made it clear during his last speech to the diplomatic community during his New Year wishes ceremony. So, how do we assess American foreign policy options through the deployment of US troops in Cameroon in the age of Barack Obama? Professor Jean-Emmanuel PONDI, welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Ebune. Thank you.
Basically, the American diplomatic sewing machine uses three threads to stitch American foreign policy: idealism versus realism, unilateralism versus multilateralism, and isolationism versus interventionism. When you look at Barack Obama's military engagement to Cameroon, where do you place that?
Well, I think when he came to power, he gave a pledge to the American public, which was not to start and launch another war, because precisely his own platform for getting to the White House was against American presence in the world as a warmonger. So I think he more or less kept that pledge not to increase the number of American involvement around the world. But in the meantime, he has to respond as a superpower to threats to the American interests around the world. American interests around the world, more or less towards the end, become threats to America, inside America.
Okay, you are talking of American interests being threatened. The text sent to the US Congress on the 14th of the month ending stated that the United States of America wanted to protect its national security.
Yes.
When you look at the Boko Haram threat, where is the connection with American security, national security being threatened?
Well, the point is that you don't know where things will end, because it's all blurred. In fact, Al-Qaeda is there, Al-Shabaab is there, but I'm not sure that Boko Haram is really linked to them, contrary to what I hear. I'm not sure. But
some people put the argument that the United States of America is entering the battle because Boko Haram has made itself part of Islamic State, which they are combating in Syria by declaring itself the Islamic State of province of West Africa.
I don't believe that, because I haven't seen any proof of that kind of allegiance being made by Boko Haram to anybody.
So how
we
does
hear
Barack
about
Obama
it,
justify that to the American Congress?
We hear about it, but we haven't seen any proof. There's no document. There's not even audiovisual document showing that that allegiance has been made. Even if it was the case, I'm not sure that it changes anything, because Boko Haram today is in trouble. They are in very serious trouble. Now, I think American interests around the world justify why they should be preoccupied with Boko Haram, because you don't know how things are going to change in the near future. And I think it's always good to have a preventive attitude, because when things have happened, it's too late to change the course of history. And I think it's wise for President Obama to anticipate. Boko Haram today is a weakened partner in terms of terrorism. The presence of America, even in an intelligence capacity, as it is today with these troops that are being stationed in Cameroon, I think it's simply preventive move.
Okay,
For America.
it's part of what the Unity Palace will call preventive diplomacy. Probably the Americans don't want to say, okay, we arrived in Rwanda late in 1994. Maybe all of that helped to shape policy. But I would like to know from you, are there really economic interests that the Americans want to defend at this early stage, at this ending stage? Because you just said that Boko Haram is a weakened partner today. If Boko Haram is weakened, why should the Americans come at the end of the day when the Cameroonian military has done the work?
Well, one thing is very certain. African and especially Cameroonian armed forces has done the job very well. That should be clear. And I think they should not be robbed of their courage and their victory or near victory vis-a-vis Boko Haram. So the arrival of American troops is not a sign that something is wrong with the Cameroonian army, not at all. I think the Cameroonian army is a good army, is a very professional army, and they've shown what they are capable of to Boko Haram and the rest. Now, having said that, American economic interests are serious in Central Africa as a whole. When you look at American economic performance in America itself, it's not very powerful. When you compare it to what is happening, what obtains in Africa, African economic dynamism is much greater than what obtains in America or in Europe. So they have to be preoccupied as concerns the future.
The Gulf of Guinea, securing the pipeline
Especially
project, which
when you look at
where
what
they
is
spent some
happening in
$3.5 billion.
Yeah, when you look at what is happening in Iraq, today the source of supply of oil is safer in the Gulf of Guinea, which is an offshore kind of...
where 25% of American energy supply is expected this year.
Yes, as opposed to Iraqi oil supply, which is inland, for instance.
Yeah.
So I think also when you...
And the major pipelines today are occupied by Islamic State.
Yes, and whereas when you take the Chad, N'Djamena pipeline to Kribi, it was built by them. So I think there's a lot of interests to be kept and to be secured by the American government and therefore American troops. But it's also important to say that out of the 54 African countries, there are 49 in which America has a presence of some sort. Most people don't know that. Of course, the one which is well known is Djibouti, which was opened in 2003.
Where they have a permanent military base.
With 3,200 troops there. But apart from that, they have like advanced posts. They have a small presence like in Niger. There are 200 troops there in Niger, which are working with Operation Barkhane, which is a French operation. So it's not, what is happening in Cameroon is not new in the American approach. But we must make sure that it is simply a temporary disposition.
A temporary disposition, sure. You just mentioned Operation Barkhane by the French with headquarters in N'Djamena, Chad. But you see, many Cameroonians said on the streets of Yaoundé, like on the streets of Bamenda, everywhere across the country, that the relationship we have with the French in this country would have expected first that we should have a deployment of the French intelligence military part of it. But this was an unprecedented move by President Biya. Don't you think that Barack Obama is entering into a zone where it doesn't master well?
No. I, for one, do not buy the idea that Cameroon should be a French preserve or a British preserve or an American preserve. No. I think that in 2015, each country must secure its own interest to the best of its abilities. That's it. We don't need to refer to ourselves in comparison to the past history. I think that today we must act as responsible partners in world affairs. And if our interest commands that we put some cooperation deals, that we do them with whichever country, I think we should do it. And I think we should stop thinking in terms of some kind of bond which is irreversible, which is unchallengeable. today's world and today's diplomacy is no longer like that.
John Kerry says that this is what the Americans called going beyond the ordinary condemnation, because each time there is an attack in Kerawa, in Fotokol, in and other areas where Boko Haram has struck, there has always been a statement from the State Department condemning. How do you qualify such a move by the Obama administration to deploy troops to Central Africa and Cameroon in particular? Going beyond condemnation, dynamic diplomacy, preventive diplomacy, or
Well,
active?
I think they themselves they don't consider those troops as active troops. These are intelligence officers, basically. I don't think that they should be considered as combat troops. They haven't come to combat. They haven't come to.
They are not ground troops.
No, they're not. And I think that American doctrine, military doctrine, doesn't allow them to come here and combat, because today the American military approach is rather to use Air Force to cover the GIs, but the GIs don't fight on the ground anymore. You saw in Iraq, the two wars in Iraq, 1991 and 2003, they didn't fight. They basically use cover of the Air Force. That's it, and this is because of what happened in Vietnam in the 1960s. You should never forget that the Vietnamese episode was a traumatic one for American U.S. forces and American, I would say, defense forces.
What happened?
Well, American troops were engaged in Vietnam from the 1960s, early 1960s. In fact, even from the late 1950s with President Eisenhower, but as counselors at the time. But in the 1960s, it was under President John Kennedy. The fight there had to do with the Cold War. They were afraid that communism would win in Asia and then come all the way to San Francisco and to mainland America. So they thought in the early 1960s it was important to counteract the communist approach and the communist deployment by fighting troops, communist troops there. So they sent troops in the early 1960s, first as military advisors, and then as full combating troops. In 1965, there were 500,000 GIs, American GIs, in Vietnam. So it was a traumatic experience because they started being killed in important numbers. And that is why American public doesn't like American engagements elsewhere. And I think it was from 1973 with the Paris Peace Accord that you actually had the end of American involvement in Vietnam.
Just about 30% of the American public is interested in foreign affairs. These are American government statistics. And you say that a majority of Americans do not encourage currently that their military be involved in external combat missions.
For a long time.
For a long period. You and I know that this work which the Americans are coming to do in Cameroon has been done in Afghanistan, has been done in Iraq, has been done in Syria, was done in Libya, reconnaissance mission, and it has been counterproductive. Do you think that it will be productive in Cameroon? Putin says that for terrorism to be eradicated, you need ground troops.
Well, I think the results are mixed, to say the least. Not to say more. There are mixed results in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and elsewhere. My position is that to win a war, the nationals of a country have to be absolutely mobilized. They have to be forward-looking, they have to be extremely dynamic. When that happens, then the war is won. I don't think that one should expect any other nation's army to come and win a war. No. They can bring in technological contributions, as they are doing, and I think it's a good thing. But the bulk of winning a war rests with the national army. And I think that is precisely what the Cameroon army is doing. It's showing its power, its discipline, and its professionalism.
Oh. Professor Jean-Emmanuel Pondi, let me ask you a question that so many people have asked online. The moment the Americans announced that troops were coming to Cameroon, the social media reaction was not receptive. Some people called it a bad idea, others said that the real terrorists are coming. These are real statements coming from Cameroonians in and out of the country. These are reactions from them. And somebody said that it is when the French president came here and said that there will be French assistance to Boko Haram, that the next day we started having suicide bomb attacks. And that when the Americans say they are coming to assist, we start hearing rumors for the very first time that a Cameroonian town has fallen into the hands of Boko Haram, Kerawa, which the government has refuted.
No,
Is foreign assistance poisonous?
As the government has shown the rumor to be totally false, it's different. Because they went there, they showed the place around, they walked around, they showed that there was no foreign presence. It's not speculation. There were television cameras there to show, and there was no flag by Boko Haram anywhere there.
But do you think,
So
do you think
speculation?
Do you think individually that foreign assistance in this Boko Haram episode is poisonous? In other words, not necessary.
Foreign assistance is not poisonous as long as it is brought within the demands and within the needs of the national army. It has to be a response to what we actually need. There's some kind of equipment which are now needed, intelligence equipment. And I think if we can get that, we can do the job ourselves. Maybe in cooperation with others, but we have to be on the driving seat. That is the most important thing. The Cameroonian army must be on the driving seat. The Cameroonian army must continue to lead the operations, and because it is the only one that knows the terrain very well, that has the acceptability or the acceptance of the population, and therefore should be the leader in that operation. Okay. It's very important.
You studied in the University of Pennsylvania State University, which is not far from the Pentagon, where
it's in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah, which is not quite far from the Pentagon, where this where this decision was taken to deploy U.S. Military personnel to Cameroon. In that text sent to the U.S. Congress by Barack Obama, it says somewhere that they will be in Cameroon as need be. You are a product of American University. What does that mean in American military psychology?
Well, I think, first of all, according to American Parliament, the troops have to be authorized. The presence of troops have to be authorized by the Parliament. That is to say, the House of
Representatives and the Senate.
Okay.
Some of them were already deployed before that text was sent to the U.S. Congress for preventive measures.
Yes, but at the end, the important thing is that the American public should be made aware of such a contingent being sent here. So I think that is the first thing. The second thing is that American armed forces have procedural texts or procedural ways of doing things. They have a protocol for entering into a conflict, but they also have another protocol for withdrawing from the conflict. And I think if certain things are not met, if certain goals are not met, they have a protocol to get out as well. I'm not sure, I haven't read what is that protocol, but I suppose that we as the host country, Cameroon,
we asked.
That is what we're being told anyway. But if we notice that the rate and the pace of attacks continues or increase against Cameroonians' targets, we will have to conclude that the reason for their being here has not been totally fulfilled. If we noticed, on the contrary, that the rhythm of attacks, the number of attacks is drastically diminishing, then we have to conclude that what they came here to do has been met with success, it seems to me. So it seems to me that we have to wait and see, and to judge in a short while to see whether what they came to do here have been accomplished.
Professor Jean-Emmanuel Pondi, let's do some geopolitical weather forecasting. The Americans have deployed troops to assist Cameroon, non-combat troops. Yes. The Germans have announced that by 2017 there will be a military attaché at their embassy in Yaoundé, Cameroon. The Minister of Communication, Issa Chiroma Bakari, in his last press conference, stated that the coming of the American troops will not be the first and will not be the last. The French had earlier sent a mission to combat terrorism in West Africa with headquarters in Chad, which is in Central Africa. Geopolitically speaking, means that the battle is in Central Africa. Is there a war being prepared for Cameroon?
Well, we hope not. The truth of the matter is that for a war to succeed, you need a divided people. You need a divided nation. I don't think that that is the case now for Cameroon. Whatever fault one can find in Cameroonians, it seems to me that we are very attached to the notion of our unity within our diversity. We accept that we are very diversified, but there are certain things which are close to every Cameroonian. And the idea of our unity, not to be joked around with, is one of those ideas. I think that as long as you have that kind of dynamics of unity, it is difficult to have a full-blown war to succeed. Because we must also say that there have been some attempts to divide Cameroonians, to bring in confusion into Cameroon by calling the Boko Haram people Islamic, for instance, which they are not. These people are not Islamic at all. And there have been things like that. But I think the Cameroonians have been very quick in detecting those, let's say, those attempts to divide them. And they've been very alert in trying to defeat them. Therefore, I think that bringing war in Cameroon will need first, as a prerequisite, to divide the Cameroonians, to confuse them, and to convince them that war is a better strategy, is a better alternative than peace. I don't think that, I know many Cameroonians who are prepared to follow that road. I don't think.
The United Nations University for Peace Director for Africa, Professors Ewusi Kale, Samuel Ewusi Kale, was guest on this program some time ago, and he blamed the Cameroonian Academy for not doing enough in providing government with research on Boko Haram and terrorism. As part of the Cameroonian Academy, do you take the blame? Why are you people not doing enough?
No, I think that before asserting blames and before saying things like that, that person, whom I don't know personally, I think should have inquired first, because it's too simple, it's too easy to say things like that. We, as international relations experts, we work in the war colleges of Cameroonian army, for instance. I, for one, have many courses there. I teach there. I'm in close contact with the high decision-making elite of our Cameroonian army. I can tell you that they are very well trained. They are very well versed into professional military tactics and so on. They are people who have shown what they can do. Now, I'm not the only one. There are many of us who teach there. There are many of us who are consulted and who do give our point of view. But it is not for us to go on national television or radio to tell the people what we are doing, because by definition, we don't have to do it.
There is a lot of confusion on defining what Boko Haram is from a simple scientific point of view. For every ordinary educated Cameroonian, even the uneducated, if you had to tell a primary school pupil what Boko Haram is, what will you tell that child?
There's no confusion as to what Boko Haram is.
The definitions are just so many in the market.
No. The definitions are clear. There are two definitions. Boko Haram is a transnational criminal organization. That's one. The second is that it is a terrorist organization. And terrorism is the use of violence to attain political aims. That's it. So that is precisely what they do, and this is what they are. So there's no confusion.
So the end result of Boko Haram is to change power structure? By your last definition.
Yeah, of course. But Boko Haram is not a religious organization. That is the main thing that everyone should remember. And therefore, if they're not a religious organization, they are something else.
Professor Jean-Emmanuel Pondi, thank you very much. This is the second time we are having you on GlobeWatch.
My pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.